He's come out of the server cabinet again.
Hello!
I was promised that PCIe would be the future, and it's either not the future or it's not PCIe yet.
Well, so I brought some goodies, and this is sort of the future of storage. The ruler format, this is E1.L, L for long.
Okay.
It's long.
Got it.
Intel called it the ruler format, but everybody else called it E1.L.
Do they have a yardstick one? That would be cool.
Yeah, it's just, that's 16 terabytes in your hand.
Okay.
That is also 16 terabytes in your hand. This is much newer. This is PCIe Gen 5. This is Coaxius CM7. And I've got this fancy pants metal heatsink PCIe Gen 5 carrier for it.
But this is way more interesting to me,
Yeah.
which is that the video card is RAM.
Yeah, so look at this. We've got 428 gig DIMMs on a single slot card. It looks like it's in a PCIe slot, but technically that is a CXL interface. So I promised you PCIe. I'm sorry.
So it's CXL?
It's CXL.
It's not PCIe.
Compute
but
Express
it kind of
Link.
is.
Yeah, it's not PCIe in that, you know how you can break out headers on the motherboard to SATA or NVMe storage?
I'm feeling pretty misled right now.
I know. But it is kind of PCIe.
Before that, this video is brought to you by Lee and the O11D Evo RGB case. The O11D Evo RGB is an updated entry to the famed O11 lineup, retaining heavy support for fan mounts, drive mount locations, and flexibility on component mounting, such as 2 options for the power supply. The O11D Evo RGB's dual chamber approach aims to maximize cable storage on the backside to streamline cable management, coupling this with a unique vertical GPU mount to showcase the most expensive part in most systems. Learn more at the link in the description below.
This one's from Smart Modular, so there are different companies that make them. There's a control chip here.
Oh, there's more hidden down there.
Yeah, actually, if you, let's see, where'd my knife go? We can pop this off. This is really insane.
When you're looking at me.
Let's see, no, I need a Phillips screwdriver.
That's not the same thing. Okay.
This is 16 PCIe Gen 5 lanes, so that's 64 gigabytes per second each way. PCIe is duplex. The memory interface is not duplex, but it's faster. And so this is actually the bottleneck. This is 2 banks of DDR5 memory, so four sticks basically.
So you're actually, because in video card world, PCIe Gen 5 on like a 5090, it doesn't really matter, at least for the testing we've done.
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe there's some machine learning workload or something, but
for this,
but here it does.
Yeah.
Okay.
So PCIe Gen 5 is slower than memory, but this is good for about 2 channels worth of memory, and so like I can do this fancy crazy thing.
That's so cool mechanically.
Yeah, and so
what's the company?
Smart Modular.
Okay.
And so this is 512 gigabytes of memory, and it is added on a PCIe interface, and your system, your platform has to support CXL, and it has to go into a specific slot that supports CXL. Not all these X16 slots support CXL.
Okay.
But as the system is configured with 384 gigabytes of memory, this is an easy way for me to add another 512 gigabytes.
How much was this base? You said
384.
384, okay.
Yeah.
So you're not quite there, but you're approaching a terabyte.
Yeah, consider that you've got a machine like this, and you need to upgrade the memory. Now, at the system build time, it used to be that you wouldn't necessarily fully populate all the memory slots. But now you're kind of faced with a different challenge. So if you had 2 DIMM slots per channel, this is only a 1 DIMM slot per channel board, but 2 DIMM slots per channel, initially when you order the system, you fully populate all the memory channels because of the speed benefit. If you don't populate all the memory channels, you're leaving performance on the table. It's generally not very good.
Yeah, but you're doing it with the intent of upgrading later, I guess.
Yeah, having an upgrade path, exactly. And so you could add more memory to it, but then the speed of the memory has to drop down because DDR5.
Right.
So
what PCIe seems like it would be much slower.
It is slower, but it's not dramatically slower.
Okay.
It's slow. It is slower in terms of bandwidth, but the real penalty is latency.
Is there a consumer pathway here at some point with anything like this?
I would love to see something like this on TRX 50. You know, TRX 50, like you could get 128 gig DIMMs. 128 gig DIMMs right now are ludicrously expensive, but you know, at the time that this system was brand new, 128 gig DIMMs were unobtainium. You couldn't do it. And so if you wanted to upgrade the system, you're going to have to pull all of those DIMMs and then you have all these DIMMs left over.
You have waste.
Yeah, this is potentially a more economical option depending on what your situation is.
When is the situation not viable for this?
If you really, really need the memory bandwidth, then it would make more sense to pull the memory that you have. So like if you had a system that had 1 terabyte of memory and you wanted to go to 2, you're going to have to take out the 1 terabyte of memory you got and put in 2 terabytes of memory, and then you got all that left over.
So what's CXL? I know I've covered it in hardware news because I remember when the first kind of announcements started going public and press releases and like AMD and Intel and everyone's got something to say about it. I remember covering them. It's been too long. I don't remember the details. This is a hard question. Is it?
It's literally a standard that lets you put memory on a PCIe card, but it's not that simple.
But that's the whole intent of the standard, is memory on a PCIe card?
Yes.
Okay, wow, all right.
Yeah, and sometimes the memory can be non-volatile. The memory in this case is not non-volatile, meaning that the memory is backed up. Sometimes it also means that the memory is disaggregated. So instead of the memory being in this chassis, you have this giant cable or fiber optic cable that goes to a pool of memory somewhere else.
And it would be PCIe memory, basically, or CXL memory?
Yeah, and so it shows up to the system like as if it's, how in a 2-processor system there's this idea of locality. CXL shows up as a node like that, but that doesn't have any compute resources.
Okay.
And the operating systems, in the ensuing years since we've been hearing about CXL, the operating systems are actually to a point where they understand a node that only has memory and no compute and will use it intelligently.
So if you have like nodes of memory, can systems, I mean, I don't do anything in the enterprise world, but can systems connect and disconnect from it on demand?
When it's a pool of memory, it would be a chunk is allocated at the PCIe resource level to a specific system.
Okay.
And there would be a control plane that makes that decision, but then only that one system can use it for that period of time.
Right, but then without full shutdown and physical reconfiguration, can you reassign it to something else?
You can.
That's cool.
As long as the operating system there's a lot of gotchas there.
Right.
The hottest thing with CXL is that you've got a machine that you don't want to spend the money to fully re-outfit it with all new DIMMs. But you want more memory capacity, or you're already at some memory capacity, because 128 gig DIMM is more than twice as expensive as a 64 gig DIMM. So it may be economically that you just put 64 gig DIMMs in this and the system, because you're...
Is 64 in this quantity plus this card still cheaper?
Yes.
Okay, do you know what the card costs? Top of your head?
Thousands of dollars.
Holy shit.
But it's,
I was looking at like PCIe cards, like got a heatsink, some memory slots, $300.
It's a game of volume. Like if they get to the volume, they could probably sell it for that and make good money. But you're also, it has to be a really common use case for that.
What is this? What is the heatsink on? Do you know? Is it a controller?
It's basically just an application-specific IC that speaks the CXL protocol.
Okay.
So there's this idea of coherency. That say you have a program that is running across multiple cores. Some of that program is local to the memory that's on the socket, and maybe it's overrunning the memory that's on the socket, and some of what the program is doing is over here. And so that the instance of a piece of information could be in multiple places at once. And so the CXL as a protocol has things for handling coherency so that you're not waiting on this device while you're working somewhere else.
Right. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, there's a whole, like CXL 2.0 actually is a protocol. There's a whole bunch of stuff that you dive into it and that kind of thing. But as like, let's say that this was a database server and you've grown into the memory and it's, oh crap, I'm hitting the limits of what I can do with my database system, and I really just want a Band-Aid that is going to get me through the next 6 months or a year or the next upgrade cycle, like 2 years from now when we replace this machine. This is a good option, potentially.
That makes sense, yeah, because I guess your only other option would be larger modules in the same slots, but if you're already maxed, so if you're maxed, if you have the largest modules you can get in all of the slots,
you can still add more.
Can you? Okay, so that was going to be my question, is because it also comes to a level of what can the CPU support, right? Like what can it even recognize? So does this expanded memory via CXL?
Sure does.
It counts against that limit?
No. It doesn't. You can go beyond.
It's isolated from the CPUs.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Okay, that's pretty cool.
So,
Interesting.
Theoretically, there will be some pedantic people in the forum that are in the comments that point out it's like, no, there is an upper limit on addressing, but for practical purposes, not really.
Well, I still remember when I asked you about why in our early code compile tests it was basically the same as just sorting by cache.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And you made a comment and you said, I'm sure somebody pedantic in the comments is gonna be like, the compiler's been multi-threaded since v4.
Yeah. There are CXL is definitely a very niche technology, but I love the flexibility of this kind of because I've seen people order it. Like, this is a 12 memory channel platform. I've seen people order these with only 6 of the memory channels populated, and it's like, I want to be able to upgrade.
Right.
But as a practical matter, are you going to get 6 more matching DIMMs later? That's problematic.
Yeah.
Are you going to have mismatched DIMMs? That's a terrible idea. Are you going to like upgrade one system and then take the old memory from the old system and put it in the new system? Also a terrible idea. When you want to upgrade the memory in a system, you really just need to do it the whole socket at a time.
There's a lot of people who just got personally offended.
It's not like it used to be. In the olden days, it's like, oh yeah, I've got mismatched DIMMs and that was fine, but it
wasn't great.
You're asking for headaches.
Yeah. What is the deal with this?
That's just the E1 format. And so this has 16 1 terabyte flash chips in it.
Do these go, again, I don't know the server world, do they socket in like that?
Yeah, so it's made for like a pizza box server or like a 1U rack server. And so they'll all slide in on the front. And that's how this is. This is made for a 2U server. And so they'll all slide in on the front. And if it's got really good airflow, these are thin and you can stack them up. But my favorite thing about the E3 is that it's got the lights on the front. So on a server, you know how like your server in there that's got the LEDs that are not on the drives?
Yeah.
It turns out that it is unbelievably complicated. And like there's suffering and like, you know, Helen of Troy, the face that launched 1,000 ships type teeth gnashing and wars fought over like, I just want you to blink the LED on the bad drive. And that is so hard to do in the enterprise, and there's so much annoyance that the open compute. It's a complicated engineering question. So,
okay, so it's not a political question. It's engineering.
Yeah, because this is a PCIe Express interface, and it's like, how do you locate this PCIe device? We forgot to do that in the PCIe standard for like 5 iterations of the standard.
Okay.
And so
does 6 accommodate it?
No.
Oh.
Yeah.
Does 7?
No.
All right.
We just keep forgetting. But the LEDs on the drive, you can now control those and be like, hey, give me a status blink, and the drive itself is responsible for its own LEDs.
Cool.
And so that's a big quality of life
improvement. Does it just use smart?
It's actually NVMe CLI. There's an NVMe CLI tool, and you can tell the drive to do the thing. NVMe CLI.
Oh, NVMe.
Yeah.
Okay, CLI. Command line interface or something else?
Yeah, command line interface, yeah.
All right, cool.
And you can do lots of fun things with this. And so like Kioxia has been working on ID10, which I'm always complaining about RAID volumes that don't support data integrity. And so they've added those kind of features. And the Open Compute Consortium has done all that kind of stuff. And this is truly PCIe. These cards, this is 4 PCIe lanes, just like an M.2. But you can get these cards in 8 lanes or more. And they actually make CXL devices that are 128 gigs, but that are that instead of this.
Cool. Okay.
And so that's a lot of fun as well. It's like, I need to add a ton more memory, and you can do that.
Is there...
But electrically, you can see that these are identical connectors.
Right.
Actually, it'd be like that.
Is the future still PCIe?
Yeah, and I think this counts. The PCIe, the physical, but not PCIe, the protocol.
Yeah, right. Mechanically, mechanically, I guess.
But this is exactly what I was talking about when it's just like, everything is going to get really fast. And it's also, like, PCIe Gen 5, like Gen 6, Gen 5, like, there's not a lot of difference in bandwidth like there used to be.
So this seems like the least financially efficient possible idea if those are thousands of dollars. But can you just put lots of them in?
Yes.
Okay.
You totally can. And if you have a 2-socket system, you should do them in pairs, 1 for each socket.
Okay, yeah. What's the biggest downside? So, like, is latency meaningfully different? Does it even matter?
The latency is meaningfully different, and we did some demos with this, like running virtual machines entirely from the CXL side of things. The latency is not a lot of fun, but for AI applications and things that demand an absurd amount of RAM, this is the fastest PCIe 5 device you can get. This will use all of the bandwidth. And so it's like, yes, PCIe 5 is the bottleneck, but also, good Lord, PCIe 5 is not slow. 64 gigs a second, 64 gigabytes per second in both directions. And so it's not inaccurate to say that that's 128 gigabyte per second device.
But it does require a CXL protocol PCIe slot, right?
Yes.
So, because that was my next question, was to be like, I could see use cases for certain production type workstations where, as you know, we use desktop parts for our editing machines, which seems awful and it feels awful because it's like, I really want to build a Threadripper machine for editing. I can't make it make sense because it's not a CPU problem, it's a Premiere thing.
Yeah, the bottleneck is not the number of cores you have.
Right.
Yeah, some people have situations like that with memory where it's like, I need more memory.
Well, and also in our situation, one of the reasons Threadripper would be nice is just more slots. So the problem then becomes like the desktop platforms don't have a CXL.
Now, right now, CXL is not officially supported on Threadripper as far as I know. There was talk of doing that, and I would love to do that. So if you're watching that and it's like, oh, a TRX 50 platform, like if somebody is going to shell out for CXL, there's older CXL devices now that are based on DDR4. Those are more affordable. If you've got a TRX 50 platform, 512 gigabytes of memory is sort of the limit, and it would be with 128 gig DIMMs just like this. And you're going to pay more for those DIMMs than the entire rest of the system.
Right.
So it's like, oh, maybe I should go to WRX80 or WRX90.
If you have a CXL device that supports DDR4, like you were saying, like if you have one of these but DDR4, can you mix and match it or no?
Yeah,
okay,
sure
that's kind of cool too. Because like the whole thing with the CPUs, right, is like very few of them support 4 and 5.
Because the interface is CXL.
So the memory controller doesn't care, I guess, because it's coming through PCIe.
Yep, as long as it does
really
the CXL protocol. So
that's cool.
And then also, like the other edge case devices, like sometimes you see these that are backed up by a battery. Sometimes you see these that are memory, but like memory adjacent. So it's like a specialty device. There's stuff in the CXL specification where you get off into special use cases. One of them is replacement for Optane. Intel Optane is like, those are like Oracle uses the crap out of Optane. Optane is really good for transactional databases where you need the system to be able to recover in case of a crash or something. And so you can use battery-backed memory in lieu of Optane. And so that plus a shared device also means that
battery-backed as in it retains charge through a shutdown, so it's like it becomes non-volatile, I guess.
Exactly, yeah. And so think about a CXL device that's disaggregated like I was talking about. So like this machine blows up. Whatever it was doing is up to the nanosecond up to date in its CXL device. Yeah. Another machine can look into its memory and see what it was doing and recover.
State. Yeah. Is how long do those batteries normally last? Is it? I mean,
it's usually on the order of hours.
That seems pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you have a major enough problem to need it, then you've probably moved it at some point. Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, I think I find it interesting the mixing and matching DDR4 and 5, like where if you're going through PCIe, then does the memory controller get used in any capacity for that, like to still control, or?
The memory controller keeps track of like a translation buffer, but it really leaves the minutia of managing that up to the controller on here.
Okay, so that's where that comes in.
Yeah.
I see now. Okay, that makes sense.
So they're speaking a more standardized protocol. So the CPU is definitely doing things. The CPU can also do encryption. So like you can do full certificate chain of custody encryption. So like if you have a bank and it's like, I want to enroll this device and cryptographically verify that this is from the batch that I ordered, these devices support that. They also support the standard, like Linux has this RAS daemon utility for reporting errors, and like it's a standards-based thing. These fully support that. But under the hood, all of the functionality really depends on the CXL protocol for coherency, expanding everything, but it doesn't care about what the mechanism is. This could be Optane, this could be Flash, this could be anything. It's going to be Glacial if it's Flash, but you can and you as an application architect can choose how you want to do that. Now, some platforms, like our Supermicro platform, this is a H13, it can actually lie to the operating system. So if you've got an ancient Garbo operating system that doesn't understand CXL, then this will just get added to the system memory. And so if we toggle that option on in BIOS, the system says, I've got 896 gigabytes of memory. And it's not, the performance isn't as good when you run an application from here and the application, the choice is gone. But it's still a lot of fun because 896 gigabytes of memory versus 384.
Right.
I've got more memory on this than in the system, which is maybe an indication that, yeah, I should actually upgrade the system.
Right.
But sometimes it's like, okay, 64 gig DIMMs, 128 gig, maybe all 64, maybe all 128. But, you know, that cost from 64 to 128 is like 3 times more expensive. And then if you can find a 256 gig DIMM, it's probably going to be 4 or 5 times more expensive than that. So even though you're only just doubling capacity every time.
That's really cool. So PCIe is not the future yet.
Well, we're sure using it for everything.
But is the future now?
Well, I mean, a PCIe lane could be a SATA. It could be PCIe X1. And
Well,
now
I was promised specifically a rack of GPUs where you could toggle the slots on and off based on what you want via.
That's liquid, and you can do that.
Well, where's that? Can you bring that?
That would be one entire rack. That's a lot of equipment to bring, but I could do it. Or we could look at it the next time you visit, because I've got one. I've got an older one. It's PCIe Gen 4, but it works. It's great because I can be like, this device goes here, and that device goes there. It doesn't support CXL, but it does support SR-IOV. And that's a lot of fun because you can have one device. Well, there's another thing called multi-root IOV. And so there are certain peripherals. AMD's got Pensando NICs, which are amazing. And so that one physical PCIe fiber optic NIC can actually be attached to 8 different machines at the same time. But software plumbing for that, you got a little bit of DIY there.
Right. The last question is the chassis intrusion switch.
It's not connected. But
I noticed that.
Silverstone cases are nice. They've got a chassis intrusion switch so that it'll let you know that somebody was in the system.
Which has been in desktops for a long time as well, but I don't know if they're as fancy. The other thing, Silverstone just generally, as you probably know at Computex, they always have like the wall of random really cool stuff that no one ever pays attention to. And they also have those like remote start cards and things like that. You
know what my new favorite thing that Silverstone is doing that no other case manufacturer is doing? Using the proper thickness of steel.
Yeah.
It's hard to get a case that's made out of the proper amount of steel anymore because reasons.
Yeah, they've mostly come down to like 0.6, 0.8, but yeah.
Meanwhile, this you can use to prop up your car if you have a flat or something.
Not that we would recommend that. That is just for legal disclaimer reasons. Don't do that.
Bold move, Cotton. Let's see if it works out for him.
All right, on that note, that's it for this one. We'll have some more stuff, so check back for that. Go over to Level 1 Techs to see more of Wendell's box of oddities, except on his channel, it's more like Wendell's fun house of oddities.
There's so many oddities.
Yeah, it's a fun house. We actually have a video about the museum you have under your bunker.
I'm trying.
It's great. Check out the videos. All right, we'll see you all next time. Thanks, Wendell.